The drumbeat continues, not by all Georgia fans. I don't even know if it's a majority or a minority, but I can tell you this, they are vocal and they want Mark Richt fired. They think they can do way better at Georgia than Mark Richt. Now, coaches all across the country have inherited top 20 jobs while Richt has been at Georgia and been fired for not winning like he has done at Georgia. Yet you want him to suffer the same fate. Coaches all across the country have inherited top 20 jobs while Richt has been at Georgia and been fired after allowing scandal and shame to take down an entire program, while Georgia, meanwhile, hasn't incurred so much as a whisper of serious NCAA trouble or a major off-field issue, yet you want him to suffer the same fate. As much as I love Mark Richt and stand diametrically opposed to anyone with that mindset, part of me honestly hopes you get your wish. Because part of you, I think, has forgotten what Georgia wasn't before Mark Richt arrived, and that's relevant nationally. Part of you may be forgetting that the resources you love to brag about at Georgia existed long before Mark Richt, and you still did next to nothing with it. Mark Richt, by the way, has won before. He was part of 2 national championship teams down at Florida State. He would go on to win elsewhere if you were dumb enough to let him go. I would just be careful before you pull that lever, or you may find you never had a Mark Richt problem so much as you had a Georgia problem.
So when I see teams get into the fourth quarter, and I've seen you dominate for 3 quarters, are you in a situation where you say, hey, let's just not turn the ball over, let's give the ball back to our defense? Well, if that didn't get you there in the first place, what makes you think it's going to win the football game?
Nobody has really affected their run enough to make Brandon Harris have to win a game. Now, I'm not a big believer in the fact that you have to have done it in order for me to think you can do it. That's why I've got LSU at number 1. But it is college football. So there is still that little doubt in the back of my mind. Michigan. You got one legitimate opponent, at least ranked on the road. Utah lost. Now, you think Michigan's a different team than they were then. I do. I think very highly of them. And they've pitched all these shutouts, but they haven't really faced a quarterback that compares to what they'll face this Saturday. Now,
it says 10, 14, 15.
It's mid-October.
Word.
How has it occurred that the SEC East could be decided by mid-October? Because if Florida wins Saturday, I know they're not favored, but if Florida wins Saturday, do you realize the SEC East is all but locked up for the Gators in mid-October?
The next thing I'm looking for, what's the narrative going to be if Alabama loses to Texas A&M this weekend?
Well, they're out of it.
Can we rewind to the Ole Miss loss, the end of the dynasty talk, after a game where Alabama clearly played its worst game that I've seen them play under Nick Saban and still had an opportunity to win their football game? I never saw Ole Miss really handle Alabama the entire time.
Steve Spurrier resigning effective immediately. J.C., you're about as close to this program as anyone I know. What was the reaction from you, from the people you know inside the program, and was there kind of maybe anything we didn't see happening on the surface? And where do the Gamecocks go from here?
Well, I think certainly the timing of it was a surprise. Coach Spurrier basically came to practice Monday, went through practice, it seemed normal, and then that was it. He told, I think, a group of seniors that he planned on resigning or retiring. Other than that, I think obviously the usual suspects are out there. Kirby Smart, Alabama's defensive coordinator, has been a name affiliated with the South Carolina job for a long time. And then you mentioned Justin Fuente from Memphis. I think he's a guy that certainly would be a fit for South Carolina. And certainly could do quite well there, given that his background is with TCU.
The Alabama's rebounded from that Ole Miss loss. They head into College Station to face a Texas A&M team many people think match up pretty well with Alabama. How do you see that one playing out?
Well, that's probably Alabama's biggest remaining test is the trip to College Station. The hurry-up, no-huddle type of offenses at times have given Alabama fits. This is also a team that Alabama beat 59-0 last year. The game in College Station 2 years ago, you notice Texas A&M got up 14-0. Alabama then outscored them 42-14. Alabama has been playing at a pretty high level. I anticipate they'll go in there and get a very close win. The winner of this game, to me, Josh, ends up being probably the front runner, I would say, in the SEC West, even with LSU on the schedule remaining for both teams. I think this is the year Kevin Sumlin, if he pulls this win off, could end up leading the Aggies to the Georgia Dome and ultimately to the college football playoff. It's that big of a deal.
Now, many have sold their Gator stock. I'm not part of that crowd, at least as of yet. This is a tough spot, though. It was going to be tough regardless of who they had under center. They're at LSU Saturday. It's still hard for me to believe this is a matchup of top 10 teams, but thoughts on that game?
Well, Treon Harris is a good quarterback. You know, he led them to the victory over Georgia last year. Not really known for throwing the football, but has some experience. And, you know, there are worse situations to be in. You know, I think that with regards to LSU, if you look at it, this Florida defense is probably the best defense they've played. So I think that that's going to be a challenge with regards to getting Leonard Fournette going in the run game. If Florida could somehow slow him, force Brandon Harris to pass the ball to beat them, you know, Florida could be in the game certainly down till the end.
I, a couple of weeks ago, thought Clemson would lose to Notre Dame. They didn't. I then thought that they would maybe suffer from a letdown struggle with Georgia Tech, and they didn't. So I've seen enough. Maybe everyone else hasn't seen enough. I've seen enough to buy in. You're close up there, though, to Clemson. How good is that team, first off? And secondly, how far can they go?
Well, here's the difference between 2015 Clemson and maybe, you know, the Taj Boyd era from 2010 or 2011 to 2013, when they were a double-digit win team every year, but they struggled against teams with better defensive lines like Florida State or like a South Carolina or a Georgia at times. They'd have that loss to Georgia Tech that would come up every now and then. You know, this team for Clemson, though, they've put it together on both sides of the ball, and particularly on the line of scrimmage. Their offensive line is overachieving right now. They're better than they expected, and certainly they're stacked at the skill positions and have Deshaun Watson. But the defensive line, I think from a pure raw talent standpoint, and they do have some young players, is probably better than that group that sent 4 or 5 guys to the NFL last year collectively when you just consider athleticism and potential. And they're playing at a high level. So when they're that good on both sides of the ball and that good on both lines of scrimmage, you know, why not take Clemson? I mean, because that's what's been missing, you know, and kind of separated the Tigers from, you know, a good 10-2 team that could go outscore Ohio State in the Orange Bowl to a team that's a championship contender.
This is what it's come to for you, Mr. Rivers. It could happen. You could win, but probably not. Matt, put the games up on the board. Confidence picks time. Couple of Thursday night games. Kentucky bumped confidence on them up just a bit. You know, the more I look at the Florida game, the more it's very impressive they hung with Florida physically as long as they did.
I just feel like this is an opportunity for A&M to show what they've tried to do defensively and offensively take advantage of Alabama and prove what they have not been able to stop in the past. LSU, I may not put this at a 10, but I think they'll beat Florida. I might go up.